Hello again, everyone. This is Zombie Kids Rule, and I'm back with part two of this series on this random monster, random enemy determination, random enemy placement, and triggering these enemy events, or basically triggering any type of event. Um, from something else, from another event that's happening. And so for this second part, once again, I'll show. So if you haven't watched part one, I'll quickly show you what this map is doing, and then I'll explain the second part. So in the first part, we had a very simple random selection of an enemy for a map event that respawns. And then over here, we have a map event that doesn't appear immediately when the map loads or when you enter the map, and then something triggers this event that makes it become active, and the enemy appears. And then when we engage with that enemy, it's a random enemy that we're going to face, one of four things. And then once we're done with that, that event it stops until we essentially leave the map, and then that resets the trigger. And when we come back to the map, that trigger can be essentially tripped again, and this random unknown monster will be able to reappear. And the reason I kind of played around with this was I can't remember what it was, but I was trying to figure out, can I use something else to trigger the appearance of an enemy somewhere? And so, can doing something somewhere on this map or another map cause an enemy or an event on another map to trigger? And this was just my test, and it's like, yes, you can do that. So that's what we'll talk about here in part B, and then or part two, and then part three is these four corner events that do not show up on the map, and then there is a random selection of which one of these four enemies is going to appear on this map, and we're using an array to do that, and a common event. So that will be part three. So here is the what this is doing. If you didn't watch the first part, the simple first part of this enemy over here, I would suggest to go do that. Now this one that I'm facing, I'm kind of moving around it. It was not on the map in the beginning, but in 2 seconds it appeared because something was triggered. So now I'm gonna face it. It's randomly a tree ant this time. So we'll destroy it quickly because I lowered the hit points down to pretty much nothing, just to make the combat fast. And now this event is not going to trigger again. It's not coming back until I leave the map and reset that essentially that trigger switch. Now this other one that was here, this respawn one, we saw that before on the last video. Now it's a gnome. I quickly destroy it, and that will reappear in 10 seconds is what's going to basically happen. And then while we're waiting for that appear and to make this other one reappear, I'm going to leave, and we're going to trigger one of those other three corner monsters to appear. So there's the other one, okay, and as you notice, this other one over here re-triggered. And I'm still waiting for the 10 seconds to go by for this random one to trigger, and it'll be here in just, there it goes. And then if I leave and come back, one of the two remaining corner monsters will appear at their enemies. Yep, there they are. And then if I leave and come back, the last one will appear. Because it's basically emptying an array of choices of which enemies to appear. All right, so that's what's happening. Again, if watch the first part of this series if you want to see the simple way of randomly selecting a monster or an enemy. But this event here, what's happening is it starts off with no sprite because there's no image. It doesn't appear to the player when the map first loads, and so the player's not going to have any indicator that this event is there. And then on page two, what's happening is a different event is setting this self switch to be on. And when that other event turns the self switch A on, it triggers this page. Now, page two is the page where the highest page where the conditions are met, and that makes the sprite image appear. and it's not stepping yet, so it's not flashing, but this happens so fast that you won't even notice, the eye won't even notice. It's fixed, so it's not moving, and this page is set to auto run. So as soon as this other event triggers or turns on self switch A for this event, it's going to trigger this page. It's going to start auto running. And in theory, that would freeze everything else, but it happens so fast. We're on this page for such a short period of time, you won't even notice it. And what all this page is doing is turning on self switch B, which advances this to page 3. And now page 3 is the highest page where the conditions are met. Stepping animation is on now, so that means this little sprite on the map will flash. It is set to approach, so the sprite icon will, or the sprite will approach the party very slowly, because again I had to slow it down for testing purposes to get everything on the screen at once without getting caught. And it's set to event touch, so again, player touch is when the party runs into something. Event touch is when a moving event runs into something. And so I set it there so that as soon as the player bumps up, as soon as the event bumps up against the player, it's going to trigger the contents on this page. And this is essentially what was in the common event for the last for part 1 of this tutorial. It's using a random number. It's a variable called random number. It's randomly generating a number between 1 and 4, and then it takes that result using a conditional branch, right? If the random number, the variable, is equal to 1, it's going to enter the battle processing for the goblin. If it's a 2, the gnome. If it's a 3, the crow. If it's a 4, the tree ant. And you notice we don't have to use any else statements, because basically it's going to figure out which one of these was the result, and it's going to trigger it. And then when it's done, it's going to continue with whatever's left. And so we don't need any else statements or anything like that. Once it figures out which battle processing we're going to do, it enters into it. Then when it's done, we come back here, and it's going to turn off the self switch A and B, which moves us back to page 1, which is where nothing's happening. It's just sitting there. It's like it doesn't exist. And it will stay that way until we do something to re-trigger this event, turning that self switch A on. So let me show you where the self switch A is being turned on, and then let me show you where, well, we'll show you that part first. So that's happening up here in this this map event called Random Monster Placement. Now, I'm not going to go through all of this, because this is actually what is being used to trigger those corner events as well, and that will be the third part. But right now, when we first load up the map, the player can't walk on this. It's invisible. They don't even know it's there. But it's running in parallel. So as soon as the map loads, this event starts running in parallel with anything else that's running. It waits 2 seconds. Now, obviously, you can set this to anything you want. For testing purposes, I made it very short so I can see it. I can see the pause, knowing that it's waiting, and then I can see it trigger. So it's quickly, so I can test these. So it's basically waiting 120 frames, which is 2 seconds. Then it's calling the common event random monster test, and that's what's activating one of those 4 corners. So we're not gonna look at that right now. But this script is what is essentially activating that random unknown monster event. And we've seen this before. I've shown you this before in previous tutorials. It is the script that you use when you want to turn a self switch on or off, either for any event on the map you're on or on another map, which is why this is an extremely useful script. And I'll just explain this again if you haven't watched the other tutorials. The script is $game self switches dot set value, and please remember that the capitals have to be where they are. If you don't capitalize in the right spots, or if you capitalize something that's not supposed to be capitalized, it will cause problems. So it's $game self switches dot set value. Then there's a parentheses, a bracket. The value of 3 is the map. that we're on. And we know we're on map 3 because we can look down here where it says 003, random monsters, 17 by 13. So 3 is the map. 7 is the event on the map that we want to do something with, and that's the random unknown monster event. And then you're using comma, so these are comma separated. And then the A is the self switch that we want to do something with. It can be an A, B, C, or D, because that's the self switches we have. And we're using single quotation marks, and then we're using a closing bracket, a comma, and then the word true is the same as saying we're turning it on, and false is the same as saying we're turning it off. Then we have the closing bracket, and you don't need this semicolon. It doesn't hurt to have it, but you don't need it. I probably copied and pasted it, but you don't need it. So again, map, event ID, and then the switch that you want to turn on or off. So that's what this script is doing. And if you haven't seen this before, basically you go to the event commands, page 3, select script, and then you can just type that in exactly as it appears. And that is running a JavaScript inside the event. Okay. And so that script is turning on the self switch for this other event, which is what's activating that. Then this event is setting its own self switch to on so that it can advance the page, and it basically makes it stop running in parallel. It turns off the parallel process. And it moves to page 2 because self switch A is on. That's the page with the highest conditions that are met, and it's not doing anything. It's just going to sit there. And if we didn't reset this, if we didn't turn off this self switch A, this will sit here forever and it won't ever call another monster in the corners. But I didn't want that to happen. So I wanted those corner monsters to turn on again, and to have another one appear. And I wanted this other event, this event 7, to also be able to respawn if we defeated that monster. So the way I did that was, when in the transfer event, this is that door that opens and we transfer away from this map. And so all I did is I have the door image, and it is set to player touch. So as soon as the player touches it, it'll activate the contents of this page. The very first thing this does is it uses a script, that same script, $game self switches dot set value, and it's going to take that map 3 event 1, which is the random monster placement, this corner one, and it's going to turn that self switch A to false. So it's going to turn it off, which means it's ready to run in parallel when we come back to this map, when the map loads again. So that's the first thing this transfer event does, is it turns off that self switch A for that event number 1. Then it plays a sound effect, which you couldn't hear because I turned the sounds down. It does the animation for the doors. So that's the set movement route. It's making it look like the doors are opening. There's a set movement for the player. Basically, it moves the player one step forward without their control. It plays another sound effect, and then it does the transfer to the other map. So it transfers the party to the other map, and that's all that it does. But an important part of it is it's using the script to turn that self switch A in event 1 to off, so that the event is ready to run in parallel. So that when we leave and we come back, this event immediately runs again in parallel. It waits 2 seconds, and then it's going to turn on a corner monster if there's any corner monsters that aren't visible, and then it sets that self switch A for event 7 to true if it's not already true, right? If it's already true, it won't do anything. And then, so if this monster was already here and it was roaming around and we hadn't defeated it, nothing's going to happen. A second one is not going to appear. But if we defeat it, then this second one another one will appear, right? And it'll advance through that way. Okay, so that's the second part of this video, and again, it's the same type of random deciding randomly which enemy you're going to face, but the part here that was different was, can we activate an event? Can we make an event appear from somewhere else on the map by doing something, or from an entirely different map? where, like, let's say I'm on a map and I talk to an NPC, and by talking to that NPC and accepting a quest, it triggers on another map the appearance of the quest items, right? The quest items aren't there. Something that I need for that quest isn't there until I talk to the NPC someplace else and trigger that event to turn on and show up. So that's the premise behind that. All right, so that's the end of part two. I hope this is helpful. Again, if these videos are helpful, please like, subscribe, get notifications, leave comments. I love comments. I like to know if these are helpful for people, or if you think of ways that you can use this on your own in your games that you're developing. If you think of new and exciting ways that you can implement some of this stuff and build off it, I love to hear that because I'm learning as well, and that helps me out. And again, if you leave comments to point people to other things, like other things they can try, or other links they can go to, other tutorials or other resources, that's always great too, because everybody just benefits from that. So thank you very much, folks. I'm glad you found my channel. I'll get the other third part up here in just hopefully shortly. And in the meantime, it's great to do these. Happy gaming and happy game development. And I will see you in a little while. Thank you.